All right, so now we are gonna roll this out by hand using a rolling pin, and we're gonna cut it into 2 different widths. Here is our beautiful dough. You can see it's kind of flattened because it's just rested and it's relaxed. So I'm gonna show you how to cut it into tagliatelle, which is super similar to fettuccine, just a little bit wider. So if you like fettuccine, you can just do the same method, but more narrow. And then I'm gonna show you how to make pappardelle, which is very similar, just much wider. So let's go. I'm gonna just use my bench scraper to cut this in half. You can obviously use a knife for this. And I'm going to keep half of this covered because again, we don't want it drying out or losing hydration or getting that skin on our pasta dough. So I'm just going to cut it in half, and because I use this, it's like kind of hard to see, but you should have like air bubbles. Like, see these air bubbles? If I used a knife, you'd be able to see it a lot better because it wouldn't have smushed, but you can see that there's like some air bubbles, and that's just from the kneading process, and that's completely normal. In fact, you want that. So I'm going to cover this and set it aside. So now we're going to roll this out. So this is definitely one of my most asked questions, is how do you roll your pasta dough by hand so thin? So it really just takes a lot of patience and some time and practice. So we are going to want, by the end of this, to see the wood grain of our table through our pasta sheet, and that again provides that super silky, just like beautiful pasta. So okay, let's start this now. So it's not too sticky. I'm just gonna add a little bit of flour because we want our dough to roll with the table and not get stuck, because then it can fold and then you'll get like a thicker pasta for that fold. So we're just going to add a little flour on both sides. You want to keep your dough floured throughout this whole process. So as it gets thinner and thinner, we're just going to keep adding flour a little bit at a time. And okay, so to start, I want to roll this so that it becomes kind of like rectangular. So the way that I do that is I just start rolling like this, and you can see it's an oval. So I turn it at this point so that when I start rolling out, these edges kind of flatten that way. So, and then it will naturally kind of even itself out. All right. So you can see. And then I kind of do like the same thing on my edges. So I just go like this, go like this, go like this, and then like that. So then, not perfect, but it's starting to kind of form this more rectangular pasta sheet, and you can totally with your hands just like form it. Like, you don't want to pull it too hard, but just to like get that shape that you're trying to get. This isn't as important for cut pasta like this, but it's a bit more important when you're doing like filled pasta or shaped pasta that have a rectangular shape, because then you just don't lose as much pasta with your scraps. So just gonna keep doing this, flipping it until my sheet becomes wider and flatter. Okay. So see how my sheet is just like rolling on top of my table? It's not getting stuck or anything. And if it was getting stuck, that's just when you would add your flour, sprinkle of flour, And you really can't like add too much flour during this process. You can, if you do, you can always just shake it off. But that's what's gonna get your pasta water to be super starchy. So if you have like a ton of flour on your sheets and your pasta, when you cook it, your water is just gonna be extra starchy. And that won't hurt the pasta or anything. Okay. So again, I'm just kind of back and forth and back and forth. And right now I'm gonna just like square out these edges and go like this in the corner, that. Okay. As mentioned, it's not super important to get these edges squared. You know, it's not a big deal if you can't, if you come up with like a crazy looking sheet, because it will all taste the same. The only thing that's important is that your full sheet is the same thickness throughout the whole sheet so that it cooks the same. So it's super long. It's starting to really get nice and thin. And I'm gonna just add some more flour at this point, just to make sure my sheet is really well floured. And especially if your sheet is the least bit sticky, just make sure you're adding flour throughout this whole process, because especially when we're gonna fold it over itself to cut it with the knife, and if it's the least bit sticky, you're not gonna get that perfect reveal when you lift your knife, and your pasta is not going to fold out. But more importantly, your pasta might stick to itself and just cause a mess. So, but I'll show you exactly what to do. All right, nice and floured. Again, don't worry about adding too much flour. You don't want it to be like piled on. So definitely getting thinner. Okay, we're getting there. Getting thinner and thinner. It's kind of hard to see, but these like dark spots, you can start seeing them under the sheet. So you can see the wood, this dark spot, start to show through. All right, it is looking really good. Super thin. Again, like you can see, it just kind of like folds over like as if like a blanket were to just fold over itself. And you still do want to be pretty careful with it. Especially like I wear rings, which can kind of poke a hole through. So I just got to make sure that I'm mindful of that. So this is the thickness of your sheet. and you can just see how like nicely it just folds beautifully. Okay, now for the fun part. We are going to cut our pasta. So you can see that the sheet is nicely floured. You just want to make sure that it's well floured so that when you do fold it all over itself and cut it, that it's not sticking together. So let's go. So we're gonna start at either end. So I'm gonna start at this end. So I am just going to fold it over itself as evenly as I can. It's about maybe like 2 to 3 inches. And I'm just going to fold until I get to that center of my sheet. And then I'm going to start the other way. So and it comes perfectly into the middle. And if yours doesn't do that, it's not a big deal. Sometimes I just like refold it or bring it a bit together. So you can see right now, these are just folded over itself. And all right, so now I'm going to cut my tagliatelle out. So I usually like to just get the edges. Sometimes the edges are a bit thicker than the rest of the sheet. So I just like to square off my edges. And I'm going to just eye this. So if you want to get the ruler out, 7 millimeters is your tagliatelle width. So and just doing this as even as I can. Okay. All right. Pretty darn good. The last two were a little bit narrow, probably more like 6 millimeters, but we try not to waste any pasta. This is the only pasta that is scraps for this one. So now we are going to reveal our pasta. I like to do this in sections because my knife is just not as long. If you have a really long knife, then you can do the whole thing, but we're just gonna basically slide our knife under one of the halves so that our blunt edge of our knife, so the non-sharp edge, is under the center. And we're just going to turn it like this and lift it up, and our pasta is going to just fall like this. And that's why you just want to make sure that they're nice and floured so that they fall nicely. And so that they don't stick, obviously. So, all right. So from here, I just take this off. What I like to do is just add a little cutting board and then just fold this over itself. Again, why you want it to be nice and floured. So when you fold this over itself, it doesn't stick before you cook it up. So perfect. Now we're gonna do this one, same thing. We're going to just lift this knife like this and let it fall. And there you go. Again, I'm just going to take this off and put it on my sheet. This is ready to cook immediately in boiling salted water for 2 to 5 or more minutes, and that's just dependent on how thin you rolled it. If you couldn't get it thin enough and you rolled it really thick, it could take 10 minutes. But you're just gonna taste test this because it's really all about preference and about the thickness of your sheet. So what I do is I just, after a couple minutes, once that pasta is like dancing in your water, then you can just take one noodle, test it, and for al dente, you want the thinnest line in the middle. That's what you're looking for, that like line in the middle. But if you like it more cooked, then no judgment, just cook it to how you like it and just continue to test the noodles until they taste, you know, perfect. And if you want to store it for later, this can just go directly into your freezer like this for 30 minutes to 1 hour once it hardens, and then you just transfer this into a freezer bag for up to a week for optimal freshness. You can literally keep it in there for months. It's not going to be bad or anything. It's just going to not taste as fresh. You can also, after this hardens, stick it in a vacuum sealer bag and vacuum seal it. Just make sure that the pasta is nice and hard and frozen, because when you vacuum seal it, some of the vacuum sealers seal super tight and you just don't want to squish the pasta. So now we are going to freeze this, and I'm going to roll out and cut my pappardelle. All right, so now we're going to just cut this pappardelle out. I'm gonna add my flour so that I make sure it doesn't stick. Same method, we're gonna just fold over our edges. So about 2 to 3 inches. So you can see I didn't really get to the middle, but I'm just gonna push that over. Perfect. So now we are going to cut our pappardelle out. So I'm gonna just cut my edges so that I straighten them. So pappardelle much wider. And I've seen pappardelle that are like way wider, so just that range. And pappardelle are from Tuscany, and they're used for more robust sauces, usually like a bolognese, some kind of thick meat sauce. And we are perfectly even. So we're gonna divide this in half. All right, and we are going to just slide our knife under with that blunt side towards the center. And we are just going to go like this. And see, it didn't fall perfectly, but now it did. And here is our pappardelle. So I do love a nice wide noodle. So beautiful. And same thing, I'm gonna just either store this in the freezer for up to a week or 2 plus, or it is ready to cook immediately. Same, like similar amount of time, 2 to 5 or more minutes. Again, it's just based on that thickness of your pasta for how long it cooks. And this is your pappardelle. So we're just gonna put it right here. Beautiful. And my other one, just gonna unfold. All right, and you can feel free to help it out if it doesn't fall perfectly. And here it is. So thank you guys so much for joining, and don't forget to follow Buona Pasta Club on whatever platforms you're on, and cheers.